Good morning or afternoon. Welcome to another lesson with Mrs. Bond. Alrighty, guys. So I'm going to go over a few words that the district is asking all of us to go over. And the purpose of this is so that we all will be on one accord. Okay? Alrighty. So the words are a topic, and topic basically means a subject. And we know that subjects will always be a noun. A subject of a text is who or what the text is about. So, subjects will be nouns. How do you find the subject? Well, what is the prominent noun? What is the most important noun that's being spoken about or written about in a text? Next, you have phrase. So phrase is a sequence of words, two or more words intended to have a meaning. Now, I also want you all to remember, because we spoke about phrases and clauses, okay? So a phrase is a group of words that do not contain both a subject or a verb. It's going to contain either or. So make sure you remember that as well. So a phrase is a group of words. It's not going to have both a subject and a verb, and is intended to have meaning. Author's purpose. Author's purpose is simply why the author wrote what he wrote. Why the author wrote the text, the story. What was his motivation? The reason behind the text. Okay? Alrighty, so this week's objective, I want you all to be able to determine the theme, central idea of a text in order to analyze its development over the course of the text, including how it emerges, is shaped, and is refined by specific details. So, I highlighted a few words that we're going to quickly go over. So when we're talking about determine, we want to figure it out. When we're talking about theme, another way of looking at theme is the unifying or dormant idea. Or it is the moral, it is the lesson of the literary piece that the character learned, the protagonist or a complex character learned. Central idea is the thought, the concept, the notion, and all of these words just mean ideas or impression that is of great importance in the text or a portion of the text. Okay? We know that analyze means to break things down into smaller pieces so that we can see how they connect. Well, how do we know how they connect? Because we're going to examine them. So we break down components so that we can see how they work together. And then when we're talking about development, we're talking about growing or becoming or advancing or maturing. That is what we're talking about, okay? Or elaborate on it. When we're talking about emerge, we are also talking about to come into existence, to develop. So what is this asking you? So you guys will be able to figure out the moral of the lesson or the greatest idea that is presented in the text so that you can break down the text into smaller pieces so that you can understand how the text is grown or how the text is elaborated on, and hint, details over the course of the text. So that means from the beginning to the end, including how it emerges, how did it come into existence, how it is shaped, how it's refined by specific details. Well, here's something I want you to think about. What is it referring to? It is referring to the theme. So we want you to be able to figure out the theme and how the theme emerges, how the theme is shaped, how the theme is refined by specific details in the text. Also, make sure you make a note of this. I want you to focus on the theme's development. Well, how do we determine a theme? Remember, we determine a theme by following a complex character and determining what that complex character learned through his or her conflicts. So that means we're going to have to look at the plot, okay? We're going to look at the exposition, the rise in action, the climax, the falling action, the demon or the resolution, okay? We're looking at how these events created conflicts within our character and how our character overcame these conflicts. So that's a little hint for you. All right, so our unit focus is, and I'm not going to read this. I'm just going to give you an overview. Our unit focus is, we're focusing on the concept of survival, and we're focusing on the feelings that the survivor have, okay? So that you all can write an argumentative essay. And we want to know if people in life or death situations should be held accountable for their actions. What actions, Miss Bond? We're going to talk about that in class. So let me tell you a quick story, okay? And I want you to pay close attention. My mother, Bug, came to my house. Then we went to the grocery store. Then we went to my grandmother's house. Then she went home. Then I took a bath. Then I went to sleep. The end. How many times did I use the word then to describe a sequence? Okay. Thank you for giving me that answer. And was there a better way that we could have added more variety to the language? Or was there an easier way that not easier, was there another way that we could have added variety to show the sequence of events? And when I'm talking about events, I'm talking about these actions, right? What's one action? My mom came to my store. That's the first, to my house. That's the first action. Then what's another event? We went to the grocery store, and so forth and so forth. So are there words, transitional words, that we could use to show sequence of events other than than? Other than than. All right, so we're going to be focusing on the order of events, right? Why? Because when we're talking about plot, we know plot has to do with the events of the story. So we need to understand these events. So let's look at this sentence. First, the sky began to change. Next, the wind began to howl and the rain began to beat against the house. I want you to take a minute to pause, and I want you to look at this sentence. Look at this sentence. So what did you all notice? Did you all notice how this sentence have transition words or words that identify sequence? Okay, so what about this sentence? Did you notice that this sentence is a variation of the first sentence? In other words, it's basically saying the same thing. We just used we wrote it in a different way. Also, I want you to look at the word and. Okay? Look at the word and. And shows us that there are two events happening simultaneously at the same time. And is showing us that there are two events that are happening at the same time. Now, which one of these sentences help to show you the order more clearly? Now, that depends on you. For me, I say the second sentence, but someone may say the first sentence. These words are words that show sequence, okay? So, what's the difference between sequential order and chronological order? I want you to remember that chrono has to do with time. So, chronological is talking about the order of time. And that time has to be specific. And that time is also tailored to a specific setting. For example, if I were to say, In the morning, Sally went to the store. Well, what's the specific time? It happened in the morning. What happened if I were to say, one day Sally went to the store? Is that specific? No. Do we know what day that Sally went to the store? No. Was it this year? Was it last year? No, we don't know that. So when we think about sequential order, I want you all to think that it's vague. It's not specific. It doesn't have a specific time frame. It doesn't have a specific setting. It is giving us the order. I want you to think about order of importance, or think about process steps. Well, why is this important? This is important for a few reasons. These words in blue, I really want you to write them down and add them to your spiral or your composition book. So why is this important? I want you to take a minute to pause right here, and I want you to tell me why you think this is important. All right, so what this does is helps the author to structure the story. It explains the order of the events, and when we're talking about events, we're talking about plot, and it helps to provide suspense, tension, and mystery. These are also things that will help us to determine the climax. These are things that are connected to the story. You got to understand the order of the events, because if we understand the order of the events, we can understand how each event influence and or create another event, influence the characters or events. I should have put a comma right there in lowercase. That's what I get for working and talking. Anyway, it also helps us to understand that the events presented in the story may not be in order. It may not be in order. What do I mean by that? Well, you may have a flashback. Flashback is when the scene of the story is interrupted and it's going to show you something that happened in the past. So think about a flash back into the past. Flash forward, a flash into the future. Foreshadowing is simply a hint about what's going to happen. And this helps us to understand if the author is using a frame story. Frame story, well, what is that, Miss Bond? I'm glad you asked. So a frame story is where a story is in one or, well, we have a story, and within that story, another story unfolds. So it's kind of like you're asleep and you're dreaming that you dreamed. Okay? So this story is going to have a beginning, and it usually have a different character tell the main story. Oftentimes it's going to end with the original speaker, and what you need to do is look for signals that the narrator has changed or that time has changed. You're going to look for changes in the verb tense. The text may start it out in present tense, and then it's going to past tense or future tense. You're looking for a change in the settings. You're looking for a change in perspective. And again, we're looking for a change in narration. Did the narrator change? So an author may begin with third person, a third person narrating, or third person narration. And then in the story, it may switch to first person narration. So the first person is telling the story, and then it may return back to third person. I know you guys are like, Miss Bond, this is a lot. But if you watched a lot of movies, you see this all the time. You just didn't know it was happening. So what I want you to do is take these notes, pause right here, make sure you wrote down everything you need. Eat the meat, spit out the bone. Alrighty? Alrighty. And I'm going to add a part 2 to this.